I came home early and found my husband undressing my little sister in my wedding dress. He said it was just role play, and I was too controlling. So I grabbed the camera, took the pics, and posted everything on their family Facebooks. I still hear the sound the zipper made. That slow, dragging scrape as my husband pulled it down the back of my wedding dress. The dress I'd stored for our vow renewal next spring. While my adult little sister, 22, stood in front of him in our bedroom with her arms lifted like she was some kind of princess. I was supposed to get home late Sunday night. The women's weekend I'd gone on had wrapped early because one of the girls got sick, so I drove home ahead of schedule, thinking I'd surprise him with takeout and maybe actually relax for once. Instead, he was the one doing the surprising. He didn't even hear me walk down the hall because they were laughing, this stupid light giggle from her and this low, smug chuckle from him. I froze in the doorway. My sister was already stepping out of the dress, and he was right behind her, shirt off, hands at her hips. They didn't jump away. They didn't scream or fumble or try to hide. They just stared at me like I had done something wrong. My sister shrugged and said, "Well, guess the weekend ended early." My husband smirked and added, "Relax, it's just role play. You've been way too controlling to be fun anymore." The world went silent in this sharp, ringing way like someone had popped my eardrums. I remember staring at the dress puddled on the floor, my dress, and I felt something crack deep in my chest. But it got worse. Because when I demanded to know what the hell was happening, when I yelled that they were sick and insane, he rolled his eyes like I was being dramatic. And then my sister, my own sister, said, "You're always too emotional for real love. That's why you don't get him." I swear everything inside me just shut down, like a switch. My hand stopped shaking. My voice went flat. And I looked at him the same way I look at strangers who put gum under tables. Gross, disappointing, forgettable. Then he said it. The line that made my stomach flip. "Besides, it's not like the money was even yours." I didn't understand what he meant. Not at first, but she did. She bit her lip to hide a smile. I repeated, "What money?" He shrugged like it didn't matter. "Don't go digging. You blow everything out of proportion." That's when I knew he'd slipped. He only said that phrase when he'd already screwed up too big to hide it. So I marched downstairs, still hearing them whispering behind me, grabbed his laptop from the kitchen counter, and opened our joint account. The number hit me so hard I had to grab the edge of the island to steady myself. $12,447.19 gone. Sent in chunks over the last 7 months. Every transfer memo said something vague like help, loan, or once, unbelievably, therapy, when the only person in the house needing therapy was me, because I was working 2 jobs to help pay off a business debt he created. They had been doing this right behind my back. Every month while I sold furniture on Facebook Marketplace just to stay afloat. Every month while he told me I didn't understand his stress. Every month while she sent me texts about how she was broke and couldn't afford gas. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even feel my face anymore. I just walked into the garage, took the old professional camera he never used anymore, turned it on, and hit record. And then I walked back upstairs toward them, holding it steady in my hand. Because if they wanted to say I was too emotional, I was about to show them exactly what a calm woman is capable of. People always ask how something like this could happen, like there's some obvious sign you're supposed to see before your life caves in. But honestly, betrayal doesn't show up with alarms. It seeps in through the cracks you don't notice because you're busy trying to keep everything else from falling apart. I met my husband, Mark, 8 years ago in Nashville. I was 25, working as an admin at a dentist's office, and he was this confident, fast-talking guy who ran a small custom furniture business. He had that mix of charm and ambition that makes you think, finally, someone who's got their life together. He was good to me back then, or maybe he was just good at pretending. We struggled financially the first couple of years, but we always pulled through. When COVID hit and his business tanked, I stepped up without thinking twice. I took on a second job at a local bakery. I sold my car and downgraded to an old Honda with no AC. I even used part of my small inheritance from my grandmother to help cover his loan payments. It wasn't resentment back then, it was loyalty. I thought marriage meant you don't keep score. But somewhere in the middle of all that, he started getting colder. Not aggressive or cruel, just indifferent. Like he wasn't living with a partner anymore, but with someone who handled his problems for him. and I was too exhausted to question it. My sister, Emily, moved to Clarksville 2 years ago for college. She always had this complicated relationship with attention, needed it like oxygen but hated working for it. Growing up, she was the pretty one. People said it. Family members said it. She acted like she was born deserving things the rest of us earned. When she struggled with bills last year, I let her crash on our couch for a couple of weeks. Mark felt bad for her and insisted we help her out. At the time, I thought it was compassion. Now I know it was something else entirely. Looking back, there were moments, tiny ones, that hit differently now. Like the time I came home late and found them laughing together in the kitchen, and he said, "Your sister actually knows how to relax." I brushed it off because I thought he meant it like a joke. Or when she started buying new clothes while claiming she was broke. I asked once how she could afford it, and she just said, "I have ways." I assumed she meant babysitting. Or when he told me I was smothering him because I asked him to be more transparent about our finances. He acted like I was paranoid just for wanting to know what was coming out of our account. But the biggest shift, the sex. Or lack of it. He kept blaming stress or exhaustion or his back hurting. But somehow he always had energy to take long showers late at night. Somehow he always came back from errands with that post-gym flush even on days he didn't go to the gym. I didn't suspect Emily. I suspected porn addiction, or maybe emotional distance. But even my worst guesses never came close to this. I think that's what hurts the most. Not just the cheating, not just the money, but the fact that I kept choosing love, while he kept choosing whatever made his life easier in the moment. And the whole time I was breaking myself trying to keep us afloat, he was quietly shifting the weight onto me so he could crawl into my sister's life like some parasite. There's a kind of pain that doesn't burn hot. It goes icy. That's the kind I felt standing in that garage with the camera in my hand. And I knew deep down that the moment I pressed record, nothing about my life was ever going to go back to the way it was. Walking back up the stairs with that camera in my hand felt like moving underwater. Everything was thick, slow, muted. I wasn't crying. I wasn't shaking. I wasn't even angry in the way people imagine anger, loud, explosive, messy. No, this was the kind of anger that goes quiet, the kind that studies, the kind that remembers details. When I reached the top of the stairs, I didn't walk straight into the bedroom. I stopped just short of the doorway and listened. They were whispering, fast, panicked, but trying to sound calm, as if I couldn't hear them through the barely cracked door. "Emily, do you think she saw everything?" "Mark, she's being dramatic, she'll calm down." "Emily, but what if Mark, just let me handle her, she always folds." "Always, folds," I hit record, then I pushed the door open. They whipped around like kids caught stealing candy, except neither of them bothered to look ashamed. Emily wrapped her arms around her chest like I'd violated her privacy. Mark just sighed, annoyed, like I'd interrupted his nap. "What the hell are you doing?" he snapped when he saw the camera. "Documenting," I said. My voice sounded so calm it scared even me. "Since according to you, I blow things out of proportion." He told me to stop filming. Emily tried to storm toward me like she could snatch it out of my hands. I didn't move. "You took over $12,000 from our joint account," I said. "Explain it." Mark's jaw tightened. "It's not a big deal." I stepped closer. "You siphoned our money while I was selling my car, my furniture, my grandmother's ring, just to cover the debt you caused, and you sent it to her." Emily rolled her eyes. "Wow, dramatic, it was help. You never help anyone unless you're the hero." Every word out of her mouth sounded like she had rehearsed it in front of a mirror. "And wearing my wedding dress?" I asked, turning the camera toward the dress still lying on the floor, crumpled and inside out. "Explain that," Mark shrugged. "You weren't using it, we were joking around." Joking around, undressing my sister, in my dress. For a second, the edges of my vision went white, like static on a TV screen. But instead of exploding, I laughed. One single, quiet laugh. And that scared them more than anything. Because that was the moment they realized I wasn't begging. I wasn't pleading. I wasn't melting down. I was calculating. Mark tried to pull the "we can talk about this" card, reaching for me like he was some wounded husband. Emily stood behind him, smirking like she had already won whatever twisted competition she thought we'd been playing. I told them both to get out of my house. Mark balked. "I pay the mortgage." "No," I said. "I pay the mortgage. You burned through every dime you made on that business. The house is in my name." He didn't expect that, Emily's smirk cracked. When they didn't move, I stepped aside and pointed at the hallway. "Get out!" Mark finally snapped. "You're overreacting. This is why I hit him with it. The one sentence that shut his mouth instantly. The camera's streaming. It wasn't. Not yet, but he didn't know that. In an instant, he panicked. His face drained of color. Emily's mouth fell open. They scrambled to grab their clothes, tripping over each other while cursing me under their breath. I followed them down the stairs, still recording, saying nothing. When the front door slammed behind them, the house went silent. I turned the camera toward myself, lowered it slightly, and said the words that would set everything in motion. "So, here's what really happened." But that wasn't the moment things spiraled. The real escalation came 2 hours later when someone else reached out to me. Someone I had never expected. I posted the video. Not the whole thing, just a short, tight clip showing the dress on the floor, their voices arguing, Mark admitting to the money transfers, and Emily snapping that I was too emotional for real love. No faces, no nudity, nothing illegal. Just enough truth to shatter the pretty little lies they hid behind. Within an hour, it had already been shared hundreds of times in local groups. I didn't add commentary. I didn't need to. The truth was loud enough on its own. But the real shock didn't come from the internet. It came from a knock on my front door. I thought it was Mark or Emily coming back to scream at me or beg me to take it down. I considered grabbing the camera again, but when I looked through the peephole, it wasn't either of them. It was Lydia, my husband's business partner. She looked pale, like she had been crying or not sleeping, or both. She asked if she could come in, and everything in me wanted to slam the door. But the look in her eyes wasn't defensive. It was terrified. She sat at the kitchen table, clutching a stack of papers so tightly her knuckles were white. I didn't offer her water, I didn't offer comfort, I just waited. Finally, she said, "I saw your video and you need to know something." She slid the papers toward me. Bank statements, withdrawals, transactions. All tied to the business account, hers and Mark's shared account, the one I stupidly assumed was still limping along but functional. He had drained it. Not just the joint household account, the business account too. Thousands, tens of thousands. And then she handed me the last paper. A copy of an email. An email she had sent him 3 weeks ago, threatening to go to the police if he didn't return the money. "He told me he was waiting on you," she said, voice shaking. "He said you were the one who had access to the savings. He said you'd transfer the rest soon." I stared at her, trying to understand. "He claimed you were partners in this," she whispered. "He said you knew everything." My stomach dropped, cold and heavy. Mark hadn't just been cheating. He hadn't just been stealing. He had been building a story where I was his accomplice, where I would take the fall. Lydia leaned forward. "I didn't believe him after I saw your video, but you need to know, he already told the bank you might have been the one making the withdrawals." I couldn't breathe for a second. "He's trying to frame me," I said. She nodded, eyes full of pity I didn't want. "Yes." The room started closing in, not physically, emotionally. Like everything I had been standing on was giving way. As if that wasn't enough, Lydia added one last blow. "And there's more." I didn't want to believe it, but I checked the records. "Some of the transfers he made to your sister, they started before she moved here, before she was broke, before you took the extra job. Almost a year and a half ago. A year and a half, before I ever let her crash on our couch, before she ever claimed she was struggling. They hadn't just been sleeping together, they had been planning things long-term. Quietly, secretly, strategically. I felt like someone had poured ice water down my spine, but Lydia wasn't done. "Mark called me an hour ago," she said. "He told me he was coming back here tonight to fix things and that you'd get over your hysterics. He said if you didn't cooperate, he'd make sure the police knew you were involved in the fraud." Fraud. Police, frame job. And then she said the line that flipped everything in my head. "He told me he has something on you, something he said will shut her up fast." I didn't know what that meant yet. But I was about to find out, because the moment Lydia left, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. A photo. Of something I had never expected him to use against me. The text came at 6:42 p.m., no name. Just a number I didn't recognize. And a single image. It took me a few seconds to understand what I was looking at. At first I thought it was some random old photo of me, but then I realized it wasn't old at all. It was a picture of me, standing in the hallway of our house, taken from behind. My shoulders slumped, my hair messy. I was wiping my face with my sleeve. It was from earlier that same day, right after I'd found them in the bedroom. And it wasn't taken by accident. The timestamp was clear. The angle was deliberate. The lighting was too perfect to be a random screenshot from a security camera. Someone had been filming me in my own home. Then another message came through. Keep your mouth shut. You don't want this going public. Public. A picture of me crying. Then my stomach dropped. He wasn't threatening embarrassment. He was threatening narrative. A woman crying alone in a hallway could be spun into anything. Instability, abuse, emotional breakdown. A hysterical wife. All the stereotypes men like him weaponize when they need a shield. He was already building a case. And if he had this photo, who knew what else he had recorded without me knowing? My pulse spiked. But the fear didn't last. Something colder settled in its place. I stopped waiting to be shocked. I stopped waiting to understand why. At that point, I accepted the truth. This wasn't a marriage. It was a setup, and I was the last to know. So I got to work. The first thing I did was gather every document I owned, bank statements, emails, receipts, screenshots of his transfers, screenshots of his messages to Emily that I found in his cloud backup. He'd synced his phone to our shared iPad months ago and apparently forgot. I didn't read them. I didn't need to. The transaction memos were enough. Next, I drove to the FedEx office in town and scanned everything to a secured cloud folder under a new email account he couldn't guess. I printed 3 physical copies and hid them in different places. My car, the neighbor's shed, she was out of town, and inside a box of old Christmas lights he would never touch. Then I called someone I never thought I'd reach out to, my old coworker from the dentist's office, the one whose mom was a retired police officer. I didn't give details. I just asked if her mom still did consulting. She said yes, and that she'd pass along my number. After that, I returned home and set the stage. Mark always underestimated me because I was too emotional in his eyes. He thought crying meant weak. He thought silence meant scared. He thought a calm voice meant I was folding. So I cleaned the living room. I made dinner. I turned the porch light on. I left the front door unlocked, just slightly, not because I wanted him in the house, but because I wanted evidence that he entered without permission. Then I took the camera, the same one I had recorded everything on, and set it on a tripod behind a row of books on the shelf. I didn't angle it at the door. I angled it at the hallway, where he would walk through to corner me like he always did during arguments. I knew exactly what he'd do. He'd try to talk sense into me. He'd try to grab the camera. He'd try to minimize, manipulate, twist facts until I was the one apologizing for overreacting. But this time, the camera wasn't for a viral clip. It was for proof, because I didn't just want revenge. I wanted him to trap himself in his own lies with his own actions. By the time the sun set, the house was silent. My heart was steady. My hands were still. At 9:14 p.m., I heard his truck pull into the driveway. No knock this time. He slammed the door open like he owned the place. His first words were exactly what I expected. "You need to stop before you ruin everything." I didn't respond, but I did notice something in his hand, something that wasn't supposed to exist, something that changed everything about the plan. He stepped inside like a man walking into a room he already owned, boots hitting the hardwood with that heavy, territorial stomp he always used when he was gearing up to take control. But I didn't look at his face. I looked at his hand. He was holding my old journal, the one I kept locked in a box in the closet, the one I hadn't opened in years. The one I used during the roughest part of our marriage, when his business failed, when I was working double shifts, when we fought every week about bills, when I was barely sleeping. My chest tightened, not because of the journal itself, but because of what it meant. He had been going through my things, digging, collecting, waiting. And then he swung it up in front of me like a trophy. "You really shouldn't have posted that video," he said, flipping the pages like he was reviewing evidence. "There's a lot in here that makes you look unstable, emotional, unfit, even unfit." That word landed differently. My mouth went dry. "Unfit for what?" he smirked. "For anything a judge might care about." For a second, I didn't understand. Then it hit me like a fist to the ribs. He wasn't threatening divorce. He was threatening leverage. I stepped back. He stepped forward. "You think people are going to believe your little meltdown video," he said. "I've got months of your writing in here. Your panic attacks, your breakdowns. All these little entries about how overwhelmed you were. I could paint a picture real fast. He tapped the cover, and I will. My heart thudded so hard it echoed in my ears. You broke into my things, I said. He shrugged. I'm your husband. Nothing in this house is off limits to me. That sentence told me everything. He had never seen me as a partner, just property. An extension of his life he could control, search, twist, and reshape whenever he needed ammunition. My voice came out shaky, but not from fear, rage trying to claw its way out. What are you planning to do with it? He smiled. Depends on you. Take the videos down, apologize, fix this with Lydia so she stops talking. And stop airing my personal business online. If you don't, I'll show this journal to my lawyer. And then your family. And then whoever else needs proof you can't handle real life without falling apart. Real life, falling apart. He was rewriting history right in front of me, turning my private suffering into a weapon. But that wasn't the twist. The twist came when he tossed the journal onto the couch, carelessly, and a piece of paper slipped out from between the pages. Not my paper, a printed email. I recognized the header instantly, his name and my sister's. I froze. He noticed too late. I grabbed it before he could. It was an email he had written to Emily 2 months ago. The subject line was "Discuss later, important." My eyes scanned the first few lines, and everything in me went cold. Once the money issue is handled, we'll move forward. She thinks she's the only one keeping the house. She's wrong. She's unstable enough that it won't be hard to show she can't manage anything long-term. Once that's settled, you and I didn't read the rest. My hands started trembling, not from fear, from clarity. They weren't just cheating. They weren't just stealing. They weren't just lying. They had been planning to replace me, legally, financially, socially, entirely. They had a plan, one I wasn't supposed to find until it was too late, and the journal wasn't leverage. It was evidence in their plan. He stepped toward me, voice suddenly sharp. Give me the paper. I backed up. He lunged. And right then, the hidden camera behind the books captured everything. His tone, his aggression, his admission, his threat. He didn't know it yet, but the moment he crossed the room toward me, he handed me the weapon I truly needed. People always assume the worst part of betrayal is the cheating, or the money, or the lies, but that's not true. The worst part is when you finally hear why. The real, sick, calculated reason the person you loved chose to break you. The moment that strips away every doubt and shows you exactly who they always were. When Mark lunged at me, I dodged behind the couch. He grabbed the edge of it, breathing hard, trying to steady himself like I was the one being unreasonable. The printed email was still in my hand. I held it against my chest, and for a split second he looked not angry but afraid. Of what I knew. That's when something shifted in his face. Not panic, not remorse. Just this cold, flat expression, like a man finally dropping the last mask. Why? I asked. Just tell me why you did all this. He straightened, exhaled once, and said it like he'd been waiting to say it for months. Because you were holding me back. The words hit me like a dull hammer. He kept going, voice eerily calm now. You made everything difficult. Money, the house, the debt, every decision. You questioned everything I did. You made me feel small. I blinked. I worked 2 jobs to fix your mess. I sold my car for you. He scoffed. Exactly, you made me look weak. I needed someone who believed in me. Someone who didn't nag or question or need explanations. Someone easy. Someone easy. He meant Emily. I felt bile rise in my throat. She's your wife's sister, he shrugged. She doesn't challenge me. She doesn't make me feel like a failure. She just lets things happen. You used to be like that, before you got needy, before you got controlling, before you turned into someone who makes everything emotional. Every line felt like a blade to the ribs. Then he added quieter, with her, I feel like the man I'm supposed to be. My hands went numb. So you stole our money, I asked. You tried to frame me, you planned to push me out of the house. He didn't even flinch. You would have left eventually, he said matter-of-factly. I could feel it. And I wasn't going to let you ruin me financially on your way out. I laughed short, sharp, because the truth finally clicked into place. It was never about love, he smirked. Grow up. Marriage is an arrangement. You stop being useful, someone else takes your place. Useful. That was the moment I realized he had never seen me as a partner, or a person, or someone he owed loyalty to. I was a resource, a wallet, a labor supply, a reputation booster, a steady hand to hold up the life he wanted people to think he had. And when I stopped being easy, he replaced me with someone younger, more malleable, more desperate for approval. That wasn't even the worst part. He stepped forward again, lowering his voice like we were co-conspirators. Look, once things settle, you'll get over this. You always do. I know you. You break down, you cry, you scream, and then you apologize for making drama. Something inside me crystallized. Not anger, not fear, clarity. He genuinely believed I existed to absorb his damage. He genuinely believed I would fold. He genuinely believed this was just another cycle where his charm would reset everything. He wasn't sorry. He wasn't conflicted. He wasn't torn. He enjoyed this. The control, the manipulation, the power of keeping two sisters orbiting him like planets. And now he was trying to restore the system I had disrupted. But he didn't know the camera was running behind him. He didn't know I had already secured the evidence. He didn't know every word he said was sealing his fate. He thought he was explaining himself. He was actually confessing. And now I had everything I needed. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I just looked at him like he was already gone. Then I stepped back into the hallway, right into the exact frame of the hidden camera, and said, loud and steady, "Mark, you need to leave my house, right now." He smirked like he'd won something. "Or what? You'll post another video." "No," I said, "I'll press charges." That wiped the smile clean off his face. Before he could react, two sharp knocks hit the front door. Precise, authoritative. Mark froze. His eyes darted toward the sound. I didn't even look at him. "I called someone," I said softly. "Not the police." Yet, when I opened the door, Lydia's mom, the retired officer, stepped inside. She wasn't in uniform, but she carried the presence of someone people didn't argue with. She had already watched the recordings I sent her. She already knew the layout of the house. She already understood what Mark was doing. She looked at him with this flat, unimpressed stare and said, "You need to leave the premises, now, or I make a trespassing call myself." Mark sputtered. "You can't, this is my—" "It's not your house," she cut in. "Your name isn't on the deed, and you entered without permission, so I can either walk you out the door or escort you out in cuffs. Pick." Emily wasn't there to witness any of it. Good, she would get her part later. Mark tried to talk to me. He tried to soften his voice. He tried to say my name the way he always did when he wanted to reset the narrative. I didn't even look at him. He finally left under her watch, furious but powerless. She followed him outside and waited until he drove away. When she came back in, she nodded once. Now we get to work. What followed in the next 48 hours wasn't dramatic or explosive. It was administrative, methodical. Quiet, the kind of revenge that ruins a person without leaving a mark on you. First, she helped me file a protection order based on the threat, the forced entry, and the attempted intimidation with my journal. She used the footage from the hidden camera, the lunge, the aggression, the verbal threats to back everything up. Second, she helped me draft formal statements for the bank fraud department. Lydia submitted her own. Together, the evidence showed a clear pattern. Mark siphoning business funds, transferring money to my sister, forging explanations, and attempting to frame me. Third, I locked down everything: my accounts, my passwords, my credit. I froze joint funds, reported unauthorized transfers, flagged my name for fraud alerts. Fourth, I sent Emily a simple message: "You aren't allowed on my property again. The police have been notified. And you can explain your part in the transfers when they call." Her reaction was predictable, defensive, cruel, self-pitying. But it didn't matter. She wasn't in control anymore. Fifth, I posted one final video, not emotional. Not messy, just facts. I explained the timeline, clarified the financial fraud, and thanked the community for the support. I didn't name them. I didn't need to. People connect dots all on their own. Within hours, their lives started unraveling. Lydia officially dissolved their business partnership and filed charges for embezzlement. Their landlord kicked them out of the apartment they'd tried to hide in. Mark's truck was repossessed. Emily's school found out about the fraud investigation, and her financial aid was suspended pending review. None of it was illegal revenge. None of it was petty. It was simply cause and effect. Actions meeting consequences. 3 weeks later, the protection order was approved. The bank cleared me of any involvement. And Mark, who once believed he owned every piece of my life, now couldn't come within 200 feet of me without getting arrested. I stood on my porch that day, breathing in the cold Tennessee air, feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Stillness, peace, control, not the kind he wanted. The kind I built for myself, piece by piece, after tearing him out of my life. And the kicker, the one line that finally let me laugh again. A mutual friend texted me a screenshot of Emily's latest meltdown. She had written, "I can't believe he lied to me too." I just stared at it and typed back. She should have checked the dress she was trying on. It never fit her.